I thought it would be useful today to talk about the uh, Ukraine-Russian war, particularly in the context of having had a very interesting chat with Carolan Robertson, who at the moment is in Odessa. And I spoke this morning to some other Ukrainian friends and closer to Kyiv. And the picture seems to be much the same. Kyiv is supposed to be filled with awe and anxiety because today is the national day. It's the anniversary of the original Kursk battle, the biggest battle in World War II, actually the biggest tank battle ever, the biggest display of military hardware ever for a war. And it was the battle that turned the Second World War, at least in the offensive by Germany against Soviet Russia. And it must have been ironic that there were German tanks going through into the Kursk region the last few days, and Russians have been greeting these tanks and the Ukrainians in a way that doesn't suggest an uprising of fury against the invader, in contrast to the tangible fury, people throwing rocks and stones at the Russians when they invaded Bakhmut, when they invaded the various towns and cities around Ukraine. In fact, there was a small video which I posted of a grandmother cursing Putin. What's he done? And the conflict has seen such dramatic shifts in both military strategy and political power. Ukraine, long seen as the underdog, is now poised in a position of unexpected strength, contemplating its next move. And far be it from me to speculate openly about what that is, while President Vladimirovich Putin faces a precarious situation at home, either in or out of the fridge. Ukraine has turned the tide on the conflict by taking the fight into the Russian land itself, and Putin has been unable to resist. This bold strategy has not only rattled the Kremlin, but has exposed the vulnerabilities of Putin's regime, and whether that indeed is still Putin. There is a theory that it is Shoigu and Gerasimov, or has been for a while. Now maybe it's somebody else. People jockeying around the name of Putin, sending out the doppelgangers to do the theatrical image. But there is a hole in leadership in the Kremlin. Whether Putin is alive or dead, it really doesn't matter. He's a dead man walking, if he is alive. Because it's only a matter of when somebody poisons him, removes him, and replaces him. Now, that may not be better than what we've already got. But it is clear that Putin's time is over, because he can no longer deliver security at home. And this adventure into Ukraine was an adventure too far. The recent incursions into Russian territory, the attacks, the strategic attacks on Crimea, the psychological impact of these moves has shaken Russia's sense of invincibility. And the sight of Russian civilians being evacuated from border regions and refugees flooding into the mainland of Russia itself, possibly even getting into the gates of Moscow. There's one city, this beacon, against which everything in Russia is measured. It's not just a military setback for Moscow, but a significant propaganda victory for Kyiv. And the domestic situation in Russia is becoming increasingly unstable, and people are beginning to realize there is one moral code in Russia and quite another in the rest of the world, and certainly in Kyiv. The Ukrainians aren't killing civilians willy-nilly. They're not firing weapons, dropping missiles out of the sky on civilian targets. But Russia is, and Russia is still doing so. Today, while I was talking to Carolan, there was a missile attack very close to where he was staying. No particular strategic aim, just terror. And what he described is very much like the Blitz in London, with people standing on roofs at night with giant beacons into the sky torn with rounds of gunshots. And we thought we wouldn't see that again after the falling of the Berlin Wall. For years, Putin has ruled with an iron fist, eliminating dissent, maintaining a tight grip on power. However, recent events suggest that his control has slipped. The fact that prominent figures within Russia are openly criticizing the war, and by extension, therefore, Putin himself, signals that this once unquestioned authority has eroded. And the erosion of power is particularly dangerous for Putin, and in an autocratic system like Russia's, any sign of weakness is fatal. Dictators who lose the confidence of their inner circle often find themselves facing threats from within. We've seen this before with figures like Prigozhin, and now new challenges are emerging, further destabilizing Putin's regime. And these developments suggest that Putin is increasingly isolated, even as he tries to project strength. Ukraine is aware of this dynamic and is likely calculating that Putin's position is not as secure as it once was, even if he's actually still there. The people who are trying to control the image of Putin are no longer as secure, and that image of Putin is no longer a lifeline. The Ukrainian strategy of pushing the conflict into Russian territory is not just a military maneuver, it's a psychological one designed to undermine the Russian leadership's confidence. Every successful strike against Russian targets, whether in Crimea or in Russia itself, serves to weaken Putin's standing both domestically and internationally. However, we have to be cautious in this optimism, because while Ukraine has made significant gains, the war is far from over. Putin still commands a vast and violent apparatus that he could deploy in desperate attempts to reassert control. We shouldn't underestimate the capacity for further escalation, particularly if Putin feels cornered. Remember the story of the boy on the staircase in St. Petersburg with the rat. His recent moves to bolster defences around key locations like the Kremlin and Sochi and his villas suggest that he's bracing for more unrest, possibly even a coup attempt. And the international community's response to this situation is also crucial. Western support for Ukraine remains strong, with countries like Germany reaffirming their commitment to military aid, albeit in a cautious way. But the question of how far the West will go to support Ukraine's strikes within Russian territory remains open. There's a delicate balance to be maintained between supporting Ukraine's right to defend itself and avoiding actions that could lead to a broader escalation. So while Putin's position is indeed vulnerable, the outcome of this conflict is still uncertain and is by no means a speedy resolution. Ukraine's recent successes have demonstrated its resilience and strategic acumen, but the path ahead is fraught with danger. The next few months will be critical in determining whether this conflict marks the beginning of the end of Putin, or if he will manage to cling on to power despite the mounting challenges. Will he manage to cling on to power in face of the ultimate adversary, death? I don't know. Often, when you think of a Hollywood action film, the hero or the anti-hero, whatever it is put in an impossible situation. They face the climax of the film. They face impossible odds and triumph. Well, there's no more impossible odds than being dead, is there? Can Putin triumph over his own demise? I think not, but, I'm not holding my breath. Putin has proven extraordinarily resilient over the last 20 years. And we shouldn't start counting our chickens before they hatch.